It is another week of the Bobcast, and we begin this week with field hockey head coach Kaitlin Thompson. And field hockey progressing, scored twice, but fell to Eastern Mennonite University 3-2 on Wednesday. The McDaniel game was postponed until October. So, Coach, last week you said that the style of play that Frostburg achieved against Randolph-Macon was something that got your team excited and wanted to be a baseline. Did you see a continuation in terms of your team's style of play in that EMU game?
Yeah, we definitely started off slow against EMU, and that kind of shows in why we had to dig ourselves out of a 2-0 deficit. But I was proud of our girls for being able to pull ourselves out of that deficit at an away game on a weeknight. So, those are promising things, something that we hadn't done in last season and we were able to accomplish this season. So I was proud of them for tying it up and almost being able to get that win.
Was there a shift in mentality? Your team fell behind 2-0 early, 2 goals in the first 13 minutes for EMU. How did your team respond mentally in terms of attitude, especially in the second half, and what really was the source of your success?
I think they just kind of saw it as a challenge. Holly Van Wee really stepped up as a leader in that game and just played excellent, and so did Ashley Myers. Both of them, as senior leaders on our team, did an excellent job of kind of getting our team to refocus and just put the energy level up so that our team could succeed and try and get the win and get out of that deficit.
You mentioned this earlier, and we were talking before. Last year, only 5 road games. You talk about the challenge of getting your team ready to play, especially a weekday road game. You're going to Virginia. What goes into getting a team ready to play, and how do you see your team kind of learning and growing in that capacity?
Yeah, our team, you have to kind of shift from the academic side of being, maybe you had a test that day, or maybe, you just had a lot of classes earlier in that day, and then you got to shift your mentality over to game mode and being ready to play, which we definitely struggled with against EMU, but I was proud of the fact that, again, we were able to recognize it early enough that we were able to pull ourselves out of it. And especially away games too, like if you're sleeping on the bus or whatever, it's just a hard mentality shift to go through. And I think that our team is, again, starting to do a better job of getting into that mentality of it's game day. Yes, I have a class earlier. Yes, I might have a test earlier, but all that's over now, and now it's time to play.
I'm excited to see a game where we have multiple goals. Ashley Myers, Molly Pickard. How were these goals generated? I know both were assisted. Were you happy with the goals, and how did they come about?
Yeah, so Ashley Myers' goal was beautiful. It was off a corner. She received the ball and just hammered it in. It was a very beautiful drive into the goal. It was fun. The defender kind of like went on her knees. Because it was such a beautiful goal to see. And then the Molly's goal was just coming across the cage, and her and actually Sam Coffey were both getting to the spots that they needed to be in, and if Molly wouldn't have touched it, Coffey would have. So it was definitely determination that put that ball in the goal as well. So just 2 beautiful goals. Our girls really worked hard as a team to get those in. So
yeah, circle play is so important, and what I'm watching for this team is generating and limiting penalty corners and clearing from defense to offense. How did your team do in both of those departments against EMU?
I thought we did a really good job. Our attacking penalty corners are a strength of ours this year. Taylor Hackett, who was a freshman this year, she is our main striker, and she's been doing a great job of receiving and sending shots in. I think every single corner that we've drawn, we've gotten at least 1 shot off, which is a really good stat to have. So we're just looking to continue that. And, yeah, transitioning the ball up the field, our midfield presence has looked really great. The passing around pressure has definitely improved from day one. And that's been a strength of ours in preseason, in practice. So it's really great to see that it's finally starting to translate on the field.
Have you seen some of the progression that you would hope for and expect from your younger players, your first and second year players, where throughout the season that they get used to the speed of the game, the demanding schedule, as you mentioned, academically to athletically? Do you see the progress from your younger players?
Yeah, and I think that's been a great thing to see, and why I'm glad we started with a tough schedule, because if they can do it now, so early in the season against these tough teams, then they should be able to do it no problem later on in the season. And I think we've seen a lot of growth from the new players this year, so I am proud of them for that.
In the last week, only one game for Frostburg State, but in the next 6 days, you have 4 games on the schedule. How do you prepare for that, and what are you looking for from your team?
We just had a nice little weekend break here. We didn't have any games because the Bridgewater game got rescheduled due to Florence. So I think, we come at it like we just had time to reset, and mentally and physically. So we should be ready to come out and play. And, games are the most fun part about season. So, yeah, it's a lot of games at once, but that's what makes it fun.
Well, we're excited to have 2 of those scheduled games at home this week. We're looking forward to it. Kaitlin Thompson, thank you for talking this week on the Bobcast.
Thanks.
Next on the Bobcast, we have Bobcat football coach DeLane Fitzgerald. Frostburg State football, no game this past weekend. The home opener against Christopher Newport was canceled due to Hurricane Florence. And, Coach, how do you manage a situation like the one you ran into last week with the weather impacting the game, and how do you really communicate with your team, and what's the objective once you know you don't have a game?
First things first, we didn't have a football game this weekend, so our sports information director's office had a little time on their hands. For everyone at home, I know you guys kind of try to visualize what this meeting and interview and all look like. Mr. Andy Stanko, who is interviewing me right now, is dressed exactly like Ryan Fitzpatrick from Ryan Fitzpatrick's interview yesterday, post-game interview. For those of y'all that would like to see that interview, Ryan Fitzpatrick is the quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Google that, and you get to see what the guy interviewing me is currently dressed like, chest hair and all.
I have a little less chest hair, unfortunately.
A little bit, but you still got that 1960s vibe going on. Studio 54.
I've got to work on the beard a little bit more. I'll get there.
I'm sure you will.
I'll get there.
Now, again, what was the question?
How do you manage a situation like the one you ran into last week?
Yeah, you're a little bit helpless. And our university and our football program and our administration were a little bit helpless last week because you can't control what the hurricane is doing. And you also we couldn't control the fact that Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday that Virginia Beach and that Newport News area was supposed to get not a direct hit, but a really strong hit from a Category 4 hurricane. So we practiced and met, and our football program did the best that we could do to get our guys ready for a game if we had a game on Saturday. And then we found out on Tuesday that the game was canceled and we had to move on with our lives.
Well, now you have sort of a de facto bye week. How do you approach that bye week, and how do you get 10% or 1% better day to day in terms of a bye week when you know you don't have a game that coming Saturday?
You're talking about the bye week like it's this week, and it was actually last week.
Yeah, last week.
Yeah, we had some downtime last week, and our players got time off and got to see their families and got to take some extra time to work on their education and work on studying. I can't speak for everyone else. I got to spend 2 days with my family and got to spend 2 days with my daughters, and I never get to go to lunch with my daughters, and I got to have lunch with both of them on Friday and got to pick them up from school, and that was really, really nice, and spend some quality time there. Some things that I'm happy that I got to pursue last week. On our players, it is really tough to keep focus. One of our best practices of the year was Wednesday night of last week, and we had a really mature practice, and I think that all of our players got a little better during that practice, all but about 2 or 3 of them. But when you're talking about 2 or 3 players out of 125, you're really, really happy. But it was mature, and we got better. To answer your question, how do you get 1% better? You're trying to dive deep into my philosophy on the 1% rule, and it's this. If you have a burning desire, if there's a fire that burns inside of you, and you're focused on what that fire is, and you can show up and channel the focus and your intensity and your stick-to-itiveness and all of that into 3 hours of football each day, it's hard. But on the other hand, it's not that hard to get 1% better each day.
I think that's interesting that you mentioned last Wednesday as one of your best practices, because you had men's and women's soccer outside, you had volleyball in the gym. Those are kind of tough circumstances in terms of the facility you have. How did your team make that work?
We have a night practice. We had a night practice because of the events you were talking about being on the turf during the day. So we had a night practice, and our players handle the night practices. That these young folks, that they like the nighttime, and that they have a little more energy and a little more enthusiasm at night, and that's what we had last week. It was good.
So some good practice under the lights. I want to take a look turning towards this Saturday, with it being now the home opener. The opponent is Rowan. The Profs are 3-0. Rowan is typically a low-scoring game for Frostburg the last few years, or a lower-scoring game than it's been for other teams. Why is that? What's the matchup like with Rowan?
Pretty good rivalry, us and them. If you've been at the games, you understand this. 2015, 16, 17. The most physical game in this conference each year is Frostburg versus Rowan, and we've gotten after each other from a physicality standpoint the last couple of years, and then we've going back through the whole history of it. 2015, we're up 6 at halftime. They come back and beat us by a touchdown at the end of the game. 2017, here at home, we win 24-14, and which was a much closer game than the 24-14 score would let you believe. And then last year, we had some breaks go our way last year versus them, but extremely physical, Andy, the 3 times that we played them while I've been here, extremely physical. Saturday won't be any different. The team that wins the physical battle this Saturday and gets a couple of breaks is going to win the football game.
Last year, Rowan led it at halftime, and that was after Frostburg's really biggest test early in the season against Christopher Newport. Are you worried at all about, well, I know you're always thinking about this complacency and how to fight it. You're a 2-0 football team. Both wins have been by larger margins here. How do you get your team focused for this Saturday?
We're undefeated, and Rowan's undefeated right now. And you look in the conference standings, they're ranked first because they're undefeated, and they played more football games than everyone else in the conference. If I have to motivate our players to get ready to play the first-place team in a conference, they should not be playing college football. I think if you can't get excited and you can't get up for this Saturday against Rowan, you need to check your pulse. Big football game. Our home opener. The crowd will be great. Big game.
We're looking forward to it. And technically speaking, or in terms of matchup-wise, what are you looking for from your football team to accomplish this weekend?
Yeah, we've got to block on offense. Our blocking needs to be better, and that's our offensive line. Our fullbacks, our tight ends, our wide receivers, our quarterbacks have to carry out fakes, because when they carry out fakes, people watch them carry the fake out, and in essence, they're blocking someone. But we've got to block on the offensive side of the ball. We have to tackle on defense. Rowan is 3-0 for one reason and one reason only: their ability to break tackles. The guy that has the football in his hand for them has done a great job, whoever that may be, whether it's a kick returner or a punt returner or a running back or a wide receiver or a tight end or their quarterback. Any skilled player that's touched the football for them has been extremely hard to tackle, and every time you put on the film, whether it's them beating Widener or them beating Southern Virginia or them beating William Patterson this past weekend, they break tackles and they break tackles and they break tackles. So we have to tackle on defense and special teams. I think that's a huge key to this football game on Saturday. And then we've got to win on special teams. And they do a nice job of scheming their special teams and executing their game plan, and we've done a nice job of that. We may be the 2 best special teams units in this conference, but we've got to win on special teams and play hard that 4 to 6 seconds each time we're out there for a special teams rep, and we've got to win that rep. So to sum it up, we've got to block on offense, we've got to tackle on defense, and we've got to play hard on special teams.
Sounds good to me. This might be our quickest conversation ever.
Well, we can talk all day if you'd like to talk now.
We're good. We're good. We're looking forward to Saturday. You can watch it on the Bobcat Sports Network, a 1 o'clock kick. Coach, thank you for joining me this week on the Bobcast.
Go Bobcats.
Next, we have men's soccer head coach Keith Byrnes on the Bobcast. Men's soccer 2-0 last week, wins over Penn State Altoona 5-0, and at Washington and Jefferson 2-1. Coach, going into last week, Frostburg men's soccer had scored 1 goal in the previous 4 games. What really shifted or went right offensively for your team in this past week?
I think the competition helped us out. Altoona was a game we were probably supposed to win on paper, but the guys did their jobs and created opportunities, and I think they were efficient and just kind of relentless trying to get into that attacking mindset. We put up a pretty high number of shots, which against anyone is still a pretty good accomplishment because we hadn't been creating a lot of opportunities the previous games. But again, some of those teams were tougher. We knew we were going to get a lot of shots off.
Well, it also looks like your team is getting healthier. Who are the guys that you are starting to get back or are working their way back and have seen a little bit of time that can really positively impact your team?
Well, we've had some guys that were out that came in injured to preseason. So Caps Capende, Camilo Ortiz, and Ala Tesfu just started playing this past week. And Derek Staines kind of had an issue going on right after preseason started, and he just got cleared this past week as well. So the guys that have been out since the start are kind of back with a little bit limited minutes here and there, but hopefully in the next week they'll get up to full availability. A couple other guys picked up injuries along the way, but we are getting healthier. Nothing should be substantial except for Sean's broken hand with the pins in his wrist. He could be out for the season, but everyone else, hopefully within the next week or so, we should have back.
Well, we're looking forward to that. We saw how some newcomers have certainly helped you. I'm excited to see 6 different guys have scored over those 2 games last week. Caps Capende, Blake Getz, Randy Putnam, Andre Lacanu, Mo Odala, Alfred Kamal. Is the diversity of scores a good sign that things are starting to click, especially with the new guys and the second-year guys? You talked about being relentless, having an attacking mindset. Is that starting to get through, especially to some of the younger players?
I mean, I think so. I mean, we're not going to have that one guy who scores 15, 17 goals. That's just not the makeup of our team. So we're hoping multiple guys can score, anywhere from 4 to 7 goals each. And if we do that, then at least we got guys that are in the right place at the right time, being efficient, and we're not just relying on one person to kind of carry the offense.
Through the first 5 games of the season, our men's soccer team had no first-half goals. You get 6 first-half goals in these last 2 games. How much of a lift is it for your team when it scores first? And what are you looking to continue in terms of that trend?
Well, obviously, we would love to always score first. I think it takes a little bit of the pressure off, and just with our young team, I think it helps with confidence. At the same time, like on Saturday we got up early. I think we felt comfortable 2-0, and then we kind of got a little bit complacent, and W&J came back and scored, and they were the better team in the second half, and we just kind of, it was like a tale of 2 halves. Unfortunately, we were able to get 2 in our half. So I think the consistency of being able to sustain that for the 90 minutes and not just do it in bits and pieces. Otherwise, good teams will make you pay.
Last question on the goals over the week. Any really high-quality goals that you were really happy with in how those opportunities came and how they were finished?
In the first goal against W&J stands out because I thought we were patient on the ball. We switched the point of attack, and then we played a long diagonal ball into the box that Mo just got his head on, and it was just a beautiful header the keeper had no chance at. That was a good build-up. The Altoona ones, trying to think. I mean, I think they were just good because we were just going forward. We were just always trying to put them on their back heels. I mean, Caps got the early goal, and he was driving at people, taking people on 1v1, just something we weren't doing a great job of before. So none of them were, like, fantastic goals, but they were just good from the set that we were just in the mind of, hey, we got to go to goal, and guys were in and around the box for anything that was going to be knocked down or rebounds and things like that. And then we did pick up a couple of rebounds. I think Dre's goal was, right place, right time. Randy's goal was just driving at the back line, getting a shot off. Caps was getting a shot off. Blake, far post runner. So they were just guys were following what we'd been working on in training, which is great.
It's good to see that. I'm really interested in the W&J game. Winning a 1-goal game for the first time with this group, And as you said, it was a game of two halves. Frostburg outshot W&J in the first half 8-2, and then W&J outshot Frostburg in the second half 8-3. How did your team's style of play or attitude change with that lead of 2 goals and then 1 goal?
I don't think our style changed as much as theirs did, and we just didn't respond to it. I thought they did a good job of pressing us, and we kept trying to play the same way. And played through the midfield and played into their numbers, and we couldn't put any passes together, and they kept us locked in for a while. And then eventually we kind of started to be a little bit more direct and bypass the midfield where they were throwing all their numbers, and I think we kind of opened it up, and they weren't quite as threatening, but for a while we didn't adjust to the way they were playing, and it caused turnovers and counterattacks, and to their credit, they did a good job of getting themselves back in it.
Winning a 1-goal game, it's the first time that's happened with this particular group. To be in and win those close games, what is required in terms of, and we've been talking with women's soccer a lot about composure. What did you see in terms of composure in the end of the game where things were close?
Well, it's that mental toughness of, bend but don't break. So we gave up the goal fairly early. And I don't want to say we panicked, but we kind of realized, all right, we need to have a little bit more sense of urgency. Composure probably wasn't on the top of our list. We probably could have been more composed. But I think it was just realizing that, hey, this game's not over. Don't want to be composed to the point where you're complacent, which is what I thought would happen at times. I think it's just we're always better when we play at a high intensity level. So no matter what the score, we need to be moving, we need to be running and playing hard, and not just thinking we're the type of team that's just going to play around with the ball, because eventually you make that mistake, and again, good teams will make you pay for it.
Finally, last week there was a lot of success, but I know you coach, and you're always thinking about what needs to be improved. So really, what was your takeaway in terms of, hey, we still need to get better in this capacity?
I didn't think we brought the same game plan from Altoona to W&J the way we wanted to move the ball and switch the point of attack. I thought we kind of got away from that a little bit. And that's why I thought our offense was a little bit better midweek than it was on the weekend. And then I think just guys realizing it, you can't just play well. We have to play well. We have to play hard. We have to kind of put all the things together. We're not good enough just to show up and be good on the ball. We need to be running at teams and recovery runs and getting back behind the ball. And now that we are healthy, the beautiful part about that is we do have some different style players. So when it's needed, we have guys we can call on that maybe change up the dynamic of our team and how we play. And I thought that happened on Saturday. I thought the guys that came in off the bench kind of brought some life to us and kind of got things back where we needed them based on the way we started that second half.
This week, home against Dickinson on Wednesday, home for Kings on Saturday. Those don't seem like really familiar opponents looking through the last few years. What are you expecting to see from those teams, and what are you looking for from your team?
Well, Dickinson's a perennial NCAA tournament team, always
Sure.
contending for the Centennial Conference, so I expect them to be one of the tougher teams on our schedule, and they're there for a reason. They're there to see if hopefully, Hopkins was 2 weeks ago and we were close. Have we improved and gotten any better now against Dickinson as we head into, conference play in another week and a half? But Kings, just another solid opponent. We never played them, I think, but we were at their place for an ECAC tournament years back. So they're going to be, just as competitive as we are. Again, I think all these games, the fact that they're toss-ups or maybe they're a little bit get a little bit of the advantage against us, I think is good, because this way we know we're trying to improve ourselves, and all these teams are going to be similar to what we face come conference time.
Well, thank you very much, Coach. 2 wins for men's soccer last week. Let's keep it going. Thanks for joining me this week.
All right, thank you.
Next, we have Frostburg State volleyball coach Becky Fletcher, and volleyball went down to the wire against Gettysburg, almost handed the Bullets their first loss of the season, a 5-set match at home on Wednesday, and then ran into some really tough competition out in Ohio at Hiram over the weekend. So the volleyball team is getting ready for conference play that begins this week. And, Coach, we'll start with Gettysburg. You said last week it would most likely be the toughest test that you had played to that point in the season. How did you like how your team kind of rose to the occasion against a team that was 9-0?
We had really great moments of amazing volleyball from both teams. It was a really fun match at times to see some long rallies and a lot of effort and a lot of hustle. and see our middle hitters really get involved in the game. And I think we had an amazing set of fans there. The students were really into the game. The parents were really into the game. So I think it was a really fun atmosphere to play in. I think going 5 is always exciting for the fans. I personally like to win like 25-5 every match if possible. A little less stress on us. But those aren't the fun volleyball games. So, going out and learning to compete and learning to play every point to our hardest and learning to be really aggressive and make aggressive mistakes are things that we kind of got to take some chances on against Gettysburg. And, it didn't come out our way, but I think if we play them again, I think it could go the other way very fast. So.
Gettysburg is a team that came into Bobcat Arena with a lot of weapons in terms of their hitters, 4 players with nearly 2 kills per set. How did Gettysburg really challenge your team and your defense, and what did you see out of that group?
Well, they challenged our blocking, which has gotten better. So since our first 2 weekends, I think there are things that young players need to develop, and blocking is something that isn't extremely strong at the club and the high school level. So when they get here and they realize how important blocking is and how much everyone needs to play a role in that, whether you're blocking the person that's across from you, whether you're setting a block, and doing your job and doing it well so that our defense in the back row can play behind them. And they did that well against Gettysburg. They set a block. We might not have blocked a ton of balls, but they set a really nice block to channel the ball to our libero and get her involved in the game.
Corey Smothers, 41 digs in that match, the second most in a single match all time for Frostburg State Volleyball. What did she do so well on Wednesday?
She picked up everything we sent her way. She did her job and obviously a little bit more. She's picking up 41 balls. So that definitely started from our front row, doing a good job of channeling it to her, like I said. But honestly, I knew she was picking up balls, but I really had no idea until after the match that she had that many digs. I think a lot of them, for her, she worked really hard to pick up, and she was also a little bit offensive at times, and she served really well. That was by far the best whole match she's ever played here at Frostburg, and it was really exciting that it could be at home and she could have a game like Gettysburg to do that in.
It was fun to watch. She was everywhere. I describe it as a gritty performance to get to 5 sets despite only hitting 050, 31 errors to 40 kills. How would you say your team kind of gutted it out and competed the whole way through despite having some not the most efficient night?
So we talk a lot about making aggressive mistakes versus making mistakes that are timid and playing not to lose. So, sometimes those aggressive mistakes where you go up and you swing hard and you get blocked as a middle hitter, you're actually doing things like holding the block and making the middle on the other side of the net think a little bit more. So sometimes getting blocked is okay, and sometimes missing a serve hard is okay because you're getting them out of system. So we missed a decent amount of serves, more than we typically do, which may have also played a factor, but those things sometimes throw another team off, those errors that are hard, and it's really good for us offensively and to keep them out of system as well.
Gettysburg, a 5-set match, a tough one to lose. So we'll move over to the weekend. Some really tough competition from the OAC. Kenyon, Hiram, and John Carroll all winning records out of the OAC. Kenyon and Hiram, 2 of the better teams in that conference. What did you see in terms of competition, and what did you see in terms of how your team played?
I knew going into this week it was going to be tough. We scheduled it so that we're playing teams better than teams in our conference. You want to train harder than the teams you're going to play, or you want to train harder in practice than you are going to have to play in a match. So that the next games seem a little bit easier. Hiram was firing on all cylinders. They are great defensively. They have a lot coming at you offensively. I think the first set, my girls really opened their eyes, and it was they were not expecting it, them to be that good. And then they made some adjustments and realized that, we can play our game and we don't have to play their game at their speed. We can play our game at our pace, and we can hang defensively and we can serve really aggressively. And that kept us in that second set against Hiram, and it was really exciting and really fun to play. It's one thing to go out and battle a team and, know that sometimes you're going to get beat every once in a while, and it's okay as long as we learned something and we worked hard, and we can move on from that.
And that's a Hiram team that hadn't lost a set all season.
A single set all season. So yeah, they're very good. I expect them to do very well in their conference this year. Kenyon also came out pretty strong and pretty tough. They're a little bit different than the Hiram team. They're a little scrappier. They're a little grittier. And so, we're a pretty gritty defensive team. So when somebody comes out and is like that against us, it's definitely a fun match to play.
What went well for your team over the weekend?
What went well for us? Our pin hitters really stepped up this weekend. So we've had Biamba play for us, obviously the first 2 weekends and the first 2 weeks of season, and she was out this weekend with a bit of an injury. So seeing our outside hitters step up and, carry some points and take a lot of swings and take a lot of positive swings. Rachel Sneed and Bailey Godlove and Haley Altemis had really great weekends for us. When you're playing really great teams, your outside hitters your pin hitters, outside and right side hitters, need to be involved in the game a lot. They're going to take more swings because maybe you're not as in system as much, but they did a great job carrying that load for us this weekend.
That's good to hear, especially with so many of those outside hitters being first or second year players.
Right.
I do want to hit on Haley Altemis and Katie Anyundo specifically and how they're growing throughout the season. Haley Altemis, it was really impressive to watch the Gettysburg game. I don't think she came off the floor, so she's just getting a ton of reps. How do you monitor her stamina and focus throughout the game? Because she can do so many different things, and she's always out there.
So we have two players, Katie Anyundo and Haley Altemis, that don't come off the court. Haley has been taking a lot of swings. She's on the outside. She's played some right side for us. She serves well. She's passing reasonably well in serve receive. So we're limited in how many subs we can make in a game. So leaving somebody on the court allows us to make more subs with our defense and get our defense involved. Haley has she likes to take a lot of swings. She likes to be on the court. So playing a 5-set match against Gettysburg shouldn't be as big of a deal as playing, when we play 4 matches back to back over the Friday-Saturday weekend. She's super competitive. She works pretty hard, so it's pretty easy to see that she's had a lot of success this year.
I want to check in with Katie Anyundo, and she's another player who doesn't leave the floor. Acclimating to life as the primary setter and really getting her style of play and the chemistry we've seen with her and the middle hitters. How has her play kind of evolved as she's come into this role?
Yeah, it's been fun. She has learned to really get her middles involved in the game. She has a really great chemistry with Biamba and decent chemistry with Ashante. But it's been fun to see her grow and talk about why she's making some of the choices she's making, and when she makes some of the choices. And she's been really lucky to work with Coach Nikki Regner, who was my setter when I coached 11 years ago. So she has some insight there. So she has a setting coach, and then she can talk to me. And this weekend, she didn't have that middle that she's had such great chemistry with. So she was able to, almost forced to develop a better relationship with our pin hitters. And honestly, I was really impressed with what happened there this weekend with our pin hitters and how Katie got them involved in the game.
Well, they will certainly need to use pretty much all of our offensive weapons this week, as Mary Washington on the road on Wednesday night is the first conference game of the season. Is your team ready and excited, and what are the tweaks that need to be made?
Oh, are we ready and excited? Obviously, conference play is what we've been waiting for and what we've been talking about and why we've played a tough schedule. We could schedule so that we were, 14-0 going into conference play, but that doesn't make us ready for conference play. So we know that we've been playing tough, and we want to play teams that have hitters coming at us in all directions because Mary Wash is going to have hitters similar to that. Are they excited? Yeah, they're very excited to get on the road, and a lot of them are from that Northern Virginia, Baltimore area, so we'll have a lot of fans there, and that's always good to see when you're on the road and have a lot of fans traveling with you and supporting you. But tweaks, making sure we're all healthy. It's really nice to go into a match knowing that you have everyone that you've been working with in practice. Making sure that we are consistent on our serve and serve receive, something we've been able to rely on most of the season. Making sure that our blocking is ready to go and we can get all of our hitters involved in the game.
Well, we are looking forward to it. Our first conference game, I believe any sport, is volleyball this Wednesday at Mary Washington. We're excited. Coach Becky Fletcher, thank you for chatting this week on the Bobcast.
Thank you.
Next, we have women's soccer head coach Brian Parker. Women's soccer, 2 games this week, a pair of losses to McDaniel and Baldwin-Wallace. Frostburg State women's soccer has 3 more games before conference play begins at Salisbury on September 29th. And women's soccer always plays a demanding schedule. This week last year, Frostburg played McDaniel and Stevenson and was looking at a similar overall record. And Coach, with these competitive schedules, you can run into tough games and tough losses, but the personnel changes year to year. How does a team get through a tough start like you find yourself in?
It's all about perspective, really. You just have to realize that our goal, our first on-the-field soccer goal, is to host games in our conference tournament. Finish in the top half is what that means this year. And so the non-conference games are preparing us for the conference schedule. I mean, that's what they're intended to do. We don't schedule wins here. We don't do that. And so we're going to go out and play good teams in other regions, in other conferences, and test ourselves and challenge ourselves. You don't learn unless you're willing to be on the edge of your ability and challenge yourself, and that's where we are.
McDaniel, I want to start with the Green Terror. Were an NCAA tournament team last year. It's a good test to have on the schedule. Gave up an early goal, battled, and then gave up a late goal. I read that it was the best game we've played with McDaniels in the last 3 years. Explain how your team competed on Wednesday night.
Well, McDaniel presents matchup problems for us typically in some area of the field. I think we were kind of outplayed in midfield a little bit last year. They've had some speedy strikers that we've had to deal with in previous years, and this year we were good. And this year we matched up well with them. We had a good amount of possession. I think statistically the game was even in almost every category. So I think it was the best we matched up with McDaniel, the best we played against McDaniel in the last few years. And the gap between the teams is pretty negligible. They had 2 players do absolutely special things in terms of the sort of dribble and shoot from the high forward, and then the crazy near post upper 90 ball for the second goal. So, look, if teams are going to beat us, they're going to have to earn it and do fantastic things and at least score great goals, and we certainly made McDaniel earn that. And, I love what Sandy does at McDaniel. Runs a great program. She was very complimentary at the end of the game, but it is the scoreboard that matters, of course.
Well, in that McDaniel game, a trend had continued where opponents were able to get a leg up early on. You mentioned when we talked at halftime of the Baldwin-Wallace game, kind of addressing that by switching up the pregame routine, looking to start faster. What was the rationale that went into that, and what is the switch up that your team made looking to start faster after the McDaniel game?
Well, I think you have to recognize that every player is going to prepare a little bit differently. And I think that, you're going to have some rah-rah cheerleader types who are going to really get in each other's face and be uplifting and really want to, sort of express themselves more in the pregame. Other players are a little more stoic and thoughtful and kind of visualizing things and just want to kind of be in their own zone, in their own lane, so to speak. And so, part of that is figuring out where the balance is. Obviously, we're going to do a lot of team activities in the warm-up, and so we're going to try to raise the heartbeat and get the blood flowing for all the players and try to really encourage a high speed of play. So just working through those things, how the locker room is and how the players treat each other is a big part of it in terms of that energy and kind of, big game day mentality. But I think you're always trying to find room for everybody to sort of individually prepare, but also make sure that we're kind of ramped up in a physical way. And I think we're working on that. And Saturdays, we were just much better at starting the game.
Yeah, the early goal from Emily Lehman, it was developed really well from Shem to Turney to Lehman for the goal. What worked for your team in the first half, and did you like what you saw early on?
We played very well in the game. Of course, we had a much better start. We got the goal, fantastic goal. I haven't scored many this year, so certainly the best goal we've scored this year.
Oh, yeah.
And a great team goal, as you mentioned. Lehman has played pretty well in training and deserved to start, and it was awesome for her to sort of get her just reward, so to speak, by roofing a terrific shot. So everything about the start of that game was good. Everything about the first half of that game was good.
The word on Saturday was composure, and I think that boils down to situational awareness, decision-making under pressure, decision-making when you're fatigued. We talked about it a little bit on Saturday. How does a team go about increasing its composure or getting it back after it's lost it?
Well, something, again, that's that sort of fluid sort of concept. It's just a mental toughness, and a lot of times it comes through experience. You can't just study for it. I mean, the studying in terms of mentally tough athletes is the previous games, is the training. You try to simulate high pressure environments in training as best you can, but it's never quite the same as having a new team, on the field with you that is challenging you in certain ways. And, I think maintaining composure in my mind is just being mentally thoughtful and remembering the game plan and remembering what we're trying to do when you are stressed by the activities of the opposition, whether that's just being physical or just the speed of play and making us chase, when we're, and when the score changes, they get a goal and they go 1-1. Well, can we just keep our cool and just continue to play at a high level? And, we made a second mistake and that ended up costing us the game. But, I think outside of the mistakes we made around their special player, that number 11, again, I thought we played very, very well. We had good second half chances too. Maybe not as good as first half chances, but I think the performance level of the team is the gauge at this stage, and we're making progress and we're doing fine.
I was really surprised to see the fact that women's soccer has 2 goals in 5 games this season, and I had to double check and see that it was true. Offensively, in terms of goal scoring, are there large changes needed or smaller tweaks, in your opinion?
I think it's almost like lanes on a track, and we just need to wear those lanes down, and just get accustomed to some basic patterns of play and learning habits of players, and just getting into what you would say, I guess, a groove, right, is getting into a pattern where we can expect things from certain players to happen. A lot of it also is sort of problem solving. What is our, we just talked about McDaniel, Baldwin Wallace, Montclair, all similar looking teams in terms of how they lined up, but all had very different habits, different patterns of play, how high their back line is, where the matchups are that we're enjoying, what kinds of things can we do to pull players out of position. Baldwin Wallace really gave us some things that we didn't exploit as well as we could have. So a lot of it is just, learning what's on in the game, sharing that information with each other on the field, and obviously us as a coaching staff recognizing things and sharing that with players on the team, and ultimately getting in good positions to score. You could say we have obviously been a little bit of a funk, haven't had a great start to the season scoring, but again, we hope that we get into the habit of scoring goals when we really need to here in the next week or so.
Finally, last week was our first chance to really watch women's soccer at home, and some newcomers stood out as being players who had the ball a lot or were fun to watch. Abby Dennis on the back line, Mackenzie Fulch also on the back line. What have they brought to the table?
Well, very different kinds of players. Abby is super athlete, tested out as the top overall fittest player on the team in preseason, which is pretty extraordinary for a first-year player. She's lean and athletic and feisty and good in the air, and we're asking an awful lot of her as a first-year player to start as a center back at a team at this level. So we're working with her all the time, trying to make corrections. I think she has the right kind of demeanor. She really wants to do well. She really aims to please and wants to perform at a high level. I think balancing the sort of pressure and expectation that comes with that for a young player is obviously what we're doing, and just making sure it's still fun for her too, like it is for everybody else. But yeah, you don't see a lot of freshmen starting, center backs, I don't think, at the college level. Mackenzie Fulch is a little bit different, because we're asking her to play make a little bit and handle the ball a little bit more, and her, she's got the good combination of sort of tenacious, smart defender and tackles cleanly and smartly a lot, but also good with the ball, good escaping pressure, sort of like midfield player skills. That's, I think, what you want out of your wide backs, players that can pass and move and run with the ball. She also strikes the ball very well. So she has a really good level of fitness and skill set that's given her a good start to the season, and she's been very consistent. Sometimes in her case, you don't quite realize the situation you're in. You're just playing. It's just a game. She got new teammates, new uniform. Let's just go out and play. And I think she just has a very, it's just another game kind of approach to it, which I think a lot of players have, and she's taking advantage of that. And obviously is playing without a lot of pressure, at least visible, pressure, and she's kind of free and doing great.
They were fun to watch this week, and coming up this week ahead of us, Bridgewater on Wednesday. After the men's game, you've got the late start, and then heading to Chatham on Saturday. What are you looking for from your group this week?
Well, it just the recovery emotionally is tough. We feel like we gave one away Saturday, and so we're going to be as we obviously have to stop, take note, learn from what we've done. You have to admit that you've made mistakes and recognize them, and then what could we do differently in that situation, in this situation, and we'll certainly do that. But I think the whole focus of the review of games like this is to look forward. What are we going to do differently? How are we going to resolve that? We have a speedy striker, who's running offside 20 yards in front of her teammates. Maybe we could pull her offside, some simple things we can just recognize, kind of cues in the game that would change our behavior in a positive way. But, again, another tough team. It's nice to play at home during the week, of course. But Bridgewater's always been feisty and physical, and they're gonna stretch us and challenge us quite a bit more, I think, than Baldwin Wallace did on Saturday. And so, another tough test for us, and it'll be interesting. I think Bridgewater's gotten some good results, get a little bit of rankings, pub. So it's kind of a game for us to really, again, sort of see where we are in the region and compared to a good ODAC team.
Hey, we're looking forward to it. We'll have that on Wednesday night on the Bobcat Sports Network. Coach Parker, thank you for chatting this week.
Thanks for your time.
Next on the Bobcast, we have cross-country head coach Dale Louie, and cross-country was idle last week after both the men's and women's teams won the Westmoreland CCC Invitational. However, even though the teams were off on the schedule, we went over last week, what was your plan for training? Well, how did it go considering weather and attitude towards training in this idle week?
It went pretty well. Probably one of the better off weeks, if you want to call it that, that we've had through the years. Got a really good practice in early Wednesday morning, and had to alter that in part because of weather. We ended up doing some of that on the track, which our preference in cross country would be not to do that. But anyways, it went well, and men and women had a good workout down there. We have some early season colds and flus and stuff like that, but fortunately not, knock on wood, anything dramatic right now. So the week off is kind of nice because it gives those people a chance to recoup a little and, not have to worry about, am I going to be ready to go on Saturday?
Well, that is some good news. For it to be one of the better off weeks, who's really leading the way in terms of attitude and approach, in terms of the members of your teams, and kind of really showing the other members, this is how we're going to approach this week and this is how we're going to practice?
It's kind of hard on the men's side to kind of single some people out because we've got, as we've been talking all year, a pretty good group of people that have, been out there. And Wednesday morning was the same group. You got Robbie Romano out there and Braxton and Jake Rickards, has really stepped it up this week. I shouldn't say this week, but I mean this season. I've been very impressed with his approach to training this year, despite the fact that he's been a little bit gimpy at times with some lower leg problems. But that kind of comes with the running.
Yeah.
So one thing I've been trying to do in practice is get some of them to take turns leading. We tend to sometimes start to break into some smaller groups the longer the workout goes, or it depends on what their assigned paces are. We're not quite there yet with that, where I'd like to be. The women, Sarah McCurry continues to, put in some really good mileage, and we had a pretty good workout with the other women on the track there the other day. I was very happy with that. In fact, although we scaled back some of what they did, they did it well, and so I'm kind of hopeful that we're getting that group into shape where they need to be, because there's a little bit of talent there. The question is, do we have enough time to get them where they need to be endurance-wise?
This week I wanted to kind of dive into the women's side with some interesting additions to the roster with familiar faces and names. Kaitlin Estrada and Mackenzie Smith, juniors, and then sophomore Maddie Watson are all now members of the cross-country team. They're familiar because they come from track and field, but what's interesting to me is none of them are distance runners in track and field. We've got sprinter, hurdler, jumper, sprinter and hurdler, sprinter. What is the benefit for them to come over to the cross-country side and train as cross-country runners? And then also, how can they help the women's cross-country's team performance?
Sure. Well, I'll go backwards from your questions there you pose. Clearly, you need 5 to 7 to get some official scoring going on. 5 for a team score, and 2 more can displace other people's top 5 runners and stuff. So the more people you have, a la our men's side, the better off you're going to be, especially when you've got most of the meets being open entries. You don't have to declare who your top 7 are or anything like that. So adding these women will be a help. Getting these women in shape will be a big plus. For the women we've had that have joined us that traditionally have done track, they're sprinters, but they all have experience in that 400-meter area. In Kaitlin's case, she's a 400-meter hurdler. Kenzie started picking that up last year, and it did extremely well in a short period of time. If you went back years ago and you were a 400-meter hurdler, a track coach would probably have you running cross country,
really,
or have you running, some distance workouts and stuff, because it's definitely a speed endurance race, and sprinters are always, generally speaking, raring to go with the speed aspect of it. Where you typically have to work with a lot of them is building up that endurance side and their ability to the transition and put that together. So cross country should definitely help them. I've been very, very impressed with what they're doing. We've been giving them some different workouts to do because obviously mileage wise they're not familiar with what our women have done. The other day, Wednesday morning, we did a workout there on the track, and of course it's a track, so they're more used to that. But scale that back. They follow directions very well. I wanted them running off of Sarah McCurry because Sarah's a very steady pace runner, and they probably got it going a little too much there for a bit, but did a nice job with that. And then towards the end of the workout, where Sarah was continuing to work out, and they had fulfilled their goals for the morning. Kaitlin jumped in and helped pace Sarah over her last lap or so, and I know Sarah appreciated having that extra boost there,
Sure.
and somebody to help pull her along and stuff. Because although you hear all the time about the loneliness of the long distance runner, they do, most of them appreciate having some company once in a while.
Yeah, and I'm sure chemistry, that's an easy addition because they're already all familiar with each other from track and field.
Right, absolutely.
I do want to shift over to the men's side here quickly. With the shorter races to begin the season, how prepared do you think this men's team is to get to that regulation meet come this Saturday?
A lot of years, that question would be probably a little harder for me to answer than it is for this year. We're probably a more experienced team. We have a lot of returners. And our training volume has certainly exceeded anything we've done around here for quite some time. So it's really just going to be a matter of the race aspect of that 8K. They're prepared for it. I don't doubt that they won't, do a good job with that. You're not expecting world beaters the first time you hit that 8K or that 6K. So it's still a little bit of a training, learning process. And as a coach and hopefully as athletes, they take that into consideration, when they go out there and race, and then at the end of the race day, reviewing what took place. You've got to put that all in perspective. So we're looking forward to that championship distance. We're looking forward to some good competition. Probably looking forward to some sloppiness out there as well. I doubt that it dries out by Saturday.
Last week you talked about how competitive some of the teams you'll see there are. Messiah in particularly is a good team in the region in terms of cross country. Well, but can we shift over? What can we expect from the course itself? It's a familiar one for your team, and then your expectations for your team.
It's a tough course. Our people, I was surprised, have expressed liking the course.
Really?
Because a lot of cross country runners in our conference, I think in particular, would run away from that kind of a course. It's got a little bit of everything. So it's almost like a little bit old style cross country from the standpoint of you're running out on some really nice grass fields. You're hitting a little bit of macadam once in a while. You're hitting some rocky pass, some narrow pass. You're hitting some farm field, literally farm field. Some of that is through woods where roots sometimes become an issue. We had deer up there last year. That was an issue for a couple of runners. And so you just never know, but it is truly a cross-country course. And I think our runners who, are cross-country runners, I mean, that's their approach to things. They appreciate that kind of a course. It's a challenge. It's a thinking man's race.
Well, with it being a familiar course, what are your expectations for your teams?
Well, we've got good competition there, and so I'm really looking forward to, how do we stack up to that competition? How do we race against that competition? It's going to be good practice in terms of bumping and shoving because of the number of people and in some cases the narrowness of that. And I think some of our newer, younger people do need to experience that a little bit. You got to stand your ground. That's not to say anybody's out there trying to club anybody over their head, but it gets to be a little bit rough and ready.
You'll see it.
Colin Flynn experienced it the first race at Shippensburg, getting run over by the whole field. It happens sometimes. You just got to keep your head, get up, and especially at the start, realize that, if you got 8K or 6K to make it up, you don't need to make it up in the, first 100, 200 meters and whatnot. You do that, you're probably getting yourself in some trouble.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to it. Both cross-country teams idle last week. They're heading to Messiah this weekend. We're looking forward to it. Coach Dale Louie, thank you for joining me this week.
Thank you.